I think it is probably safe to say that one of the things that is going to make your YouTube video stand out from the rest of the crowd is to create a beautiful thumbnail to go along with your video. What they call at YouTube a custom thumbnail. And you've probably noticed that option whenever you upload a video. It will either randomly select a frame from your video and use that as the thumbnail, or it gives you the option of uploading a custom thumbnail. And if you have ever done a search in YouTube, you have probably noticed that the videos that come to the top of your searches have beautiful thumbnails created for their videos. And it's probably no accident that these have reached the top of the search engine. You get the idea that beautiful thumbnails might help you get your videos clicked on and seen. And so in today's lesson, we're going to show you how to make some beautiful thumbnails using Photoshop. All right, let's start a project here, File, New. And the first question that people might ask is, how big should my thumbnail be? Thumbnails are pretty small. What size do I need to make them? And while they look small, they are also the first frame that some people will see when they go to view their video. And you have to remember that these days a lot of people are watching YouTube videos on their large screens, their high-definition monitors, some even 4K. So you don't want to make your file too small. I haven't yet started making my thumbs in 4K, but I am making them in high definition. And so let's go over to Film and Video and use the high definition template, the 1920 by 1080. Just double click on that and you'll open up a file that's ready to go at 1920 by 1080 pixels. Now, if you are really good at Photoshop, you could just start creating your graphic right here in this document. You could create your own background and or do a gradiated background and start creating some beautiful graphics. I'm a photographer and I just love images, and so I usually start with a photograph. Let's open up a photograph here. I have one ready to go for this tutorial. Now, when photos come in from your camera, they're usually too large for a high-definition video frame. And so the first thing that I usually do is just resize it. Control-Alt-I brings up the image size tool. And just to give myself a little framing option, I will probably start with 2200 pixels in width, or 2000 pixels in width in this case. And that reduces the size, and then I'll just use some keyboard shortcuts like Control-A to select the image, Control-C to copy it, and then go over to my new document here and hit the Control-V key to bring it in. Now let's reduce the size of the image on our screen here by hitting the Control- key, and that way we can see what we're doing a little better. Let's go up to our Move tool, our Select tool, and just now point to the image and kind of move it around. Since we did it at 2000, we don't have a lot of room to work with there, but let's just get it to the point where we think we might be able to utilize this image. Now we can start bringing in elements like a logo. Let's open up the logo that I usually use here, Learning Media Skills. And again, I'll use my keyboard shortcuts, Control-A to select it, Control-C to copy it, and then Control-V to bring it in. It's too large, as we can tell, and so I'm going to hit the Control-T key, and that selects the piece of media. And now, with the latest version of Photoshop, you can just simply point to a corner here and start dragging it inwards to resize it. And I'll bring it down to about something like that, and then hit the return key to accept that, and then we'll just drag it up and pop it into place there. Now the next thing we'll need is a title, and so going over to our title tool, let's just select that and then click anywhere in the document. And with the latest version of Photoshop, it brings it in a kind of sample text there, and it's too large for our small image here, so let's just select the whole thing. And There's several different ways you can resize this. With it all the text selected, we could go up to our font size here. We see that it was brought in at 416. Well, let's maybe drop that back down to 130 and see what that looks like. That's a lot better. And now with it selected, we can start typing in what we want for a title. Recently, I've been doing some tutorials on a new camera that I have, the Canon C200. And so let's use that as an example. Filming the third. Now we see that the spaces in between our two lines of text are it's just too much. And that's probably because Photoshop is remembering the large size that it brought in by default. So let's go over and change that. If you don't have your character window open like this, you can open it by going to Window and making sure that your character window is checked. And then with that open, we can go up here to this area in here and notice that it is, yes, indeed showing 378 pixels in between each line of text. So we can resize that either by typing in a new size. We'd probably type it to 130 if we did that, or we can simply point to the area here, click down with our left mouse and start dragging it to the left, and we see that that starts reducing the numbers. And we get it to about 130. Take a look over here at our document, and yeah, that looks not too bad. And so we can let our mouse go and accept that. And then with our move tool selected again, let's bring that into place, something like about there. Now, because of the photograph underneath being so prominent, it's a little bit too busy to really recognize what the text is saying, or at least it's difficult to look at. And so we want to do something about that to make our text, our title, stand out from the image itself. And one way that you could do that is create a layer underneath it, and that will make it stand out. I kind of like the rounded edges, and so let's select that, and then just go to the area of the text and start surrounding that text with the size of the layer that you want to put underneath it. Let your mouse go, and initially it covers the text itself. But if we go back to layers and drag that to be underneath our text, then it shows up underneath. But then we've kind of blocked out our image quite a bit, and we don't want that. So we'll go up to the opacity of that layer and start bringing it down so that the image is still visible underneath it, but it does provide enough of a background that we can read our text better. And you can slide that back and forth and decide what would be the best amount of opacity to use there. And then perhaps just to add a little bit more definition, we'll want to add a drop shadow to that. Make the size not too large and bring down the opacity. Something like that. All right. However, we've still got some problems here. It's kind of overlapping our logo here a little bit. Let's maybe reduce the size of our logo to start with. Hit the Control-T key and just drag that up again. I'm not too happy with the shade of the background there. It's kind of grayish. I think probably because we started with kind of a grayish blue. Let's bring this down to total black. Hit OK and try that again. Let's go and just drag around that one more time. And then let's trash that first one. And then we can reduce the opacity of this. And yes, that looks a lot better. So that's one way that you could do it. However, lately I have been using a little different approach that I think is more appealing, more attractive, and helps give more definition to my logo. And so let me show you how to do that. Let's shut off the background there. And let's go to the layer of our image, select that, do a right click on that, and select Duplicate Layer. Hit OK. And now we see that we've duplicated our layer here. Let's click down to the lower version of the image. Let's go to the filter options and go down to Blur Gallery and choose Field Blur. And let's up our blur to, maybe 240 pixels, and then hit OK. And that's going to blur that lower level. If we were to take a look at it, shut off the upper layer, we'd see how much it has blurred it. And now what we want to do is select the upper layer of the image and go over to our eraser tool. Click in the area, or bring it over to the area, and do a right click. And first of all, make sure that your hardness slider is right down to 0. And your size is, well, this is filling the whole screen. We're not, maybe just a little smaller than that, but we want it large enough so that we're taking advantage of the feathering that occurs naturally when your hardness is set to 0. Okay, and with that selected, let's start clicking in our image. And what we're doing is we're erasing the upper image so that the blurred image starts to come through. And so if we go up here and blur this area here, then our logo starts to stand out a lot better. And we can just bring that over also into the title area, and that makes the title itself stand out nicely as well. And then just for effect, you might catch some of the edges with that as well, and you've got yourself a beautiful title. And once you're happy, let's do a save of that. Now, if you just hit Control S and save it, it's going to be saved as a Photoshop title. And you don't necessarily want that for your YouTube. When you upload the custom thumbnails, I'm not even sure that YouTube will take an actual Photoshop file. And so what you want to do instead is select the JPEG format, and then so give it a name. And for internet, I usually like the quality of 9. Hit OK. And while I've got it here, what I usually do is also at the same time make a lower resolution version of the thumbnail, say at about 800 pixels. So let's hit the Control-Alt-I to get our size tool here. Hit 800, hit OK, and save another JPEG at this size. And that way, if you ever need a JPEG for, say, your website, you're not having to deal with such a large size at your website. Okay, so now I have 2 versions of my thumbnail. Before I close out of the document, though, I will go to the history and make sure I go back to the original size. And I do want to save this, actually, as a Photoshop file, so that the next time I create my thumbnails, I've got the template already in place. I've got my logo in place, I've got text the size that I want, and so it makes it easier to make the next thumbnail for your next video. So I will save that as a Photoshop file. So say video thumbs. All right, well, I believe that that does it for our tutorial on how to make thumbnails for your YouTube videos. This is Frank Spangler for Learning Media Skills. If you found this video helpful, please give us a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Catch you down the road.